Welcome to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm Nicole Eaton, author of the books Rock Your Soul and Rock Your Comeback, as well as an intuitive therapist, and I'm here to remind you of your power. This podcast focuses on mindset and inviting the universe in to create a life that feels so good, so aligned, and so authentic. I hope you're ready. Welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Comeback podcast. Today, I'm joined by intuitive business and life coach, Brittany Renee, and I'm so excited to have her on because she has just the most loving, beautiful energy, and I love bringing you guys people who I think you're going to absolutely fall in love with. So welcome, Brittany.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
One of the things that I love to ask my clients, or not clients, I love to ask my guests in that mode, right? One of the things that I love to ask my guests when I have them on is, what is your definition of power?
That is such a good question. To me, the definition of power is being fully authentic and walking in that energy and just a full embodiment. I think that is personal power for each of us.
For people who don't really know what embodiment means, how would you break that down for them?
I just did a video on this yesterday, so I'm well versed for this question. So embodiment is when your desires, your beliefs, and the energy that you're really trying to obtain all start to melt together. So I tell people, close your eyes for a moment and imagine the version that you're trying to embody, right? That like avatar, that main character vibe. How do they walk? How do they speak? How do they show up? What do they do, right? And then starting to understand that as soon as you just step into those action pieces, those energetic pieces, and whatever else needs to flow, you're starting to embody what that version is. And then inevitably, that version has to start to exude from you on a more normal daily basis because you're intentionally stepping into the beliefs that that version has and the thought forms that that version has and how they move. So you're just basically pulling all of your essence around all of those pillars to start to embody that version, that person, that belief.
I love that you included action in that because I think there's so much talk in especially the energetic community where we're using these big, beautiful words and we're, putting a lot of thought and energy out there. But I think that action is a necessary step that we don't always do. I'm curious, what's a couple ways in your life that you put embodiment into action?
So for me, I'm always every morning waking up, and before I let myself get out of bed, I am doing kind of a little rundown of where am I in my physical body today, because it's a really good meter for me of how am I moving through my day today. So I check, where's my energy at? Do I need to drop into even more gratitude than normal? So I do this kind of morning body check, tapping into the physical part of me. And I always do gratitude, at least 3 things that I'm grateful for, even if it's just, I woke up this morning, I'm able to get up out of the bed and, simple little pieces like I'm grateful that I even have the consciousness to do gratitude in the morning. So they can be super simple, or some mornings I'll sit there and just be in my pleasure practice of being so grateful that my whole heart center is just expanding. So that's one morning piece. Then I'm always doing movement. If I can do 20 or 30 minutes of actually getting outside in the ground or really just allowing myself to be slow, I love to kind of call in all of my power, call my energy back into my physical body, and allow myself to also move any grief, any fear, guilt, shame, resistance, blocks through movement, actually getting it out of my cells. Past that, I really work on mindset. And I'm very grateful that at this point, a lot of my mindset, I've worked so hard that it's pretty secondhand, but sometimes there are moments, right, that, these thoughts will come in of limited belief or upper limiting or self-sabotage in something. And I'll automatically kind of just be like, thank you for coming, but we do not need you here today. And I just imagine that thought being like a version of me that needed to be witnessed. And then I'm like, now you can go sit over here and we're going to bring in the more elevated thought. And past that, I'm really just always about making sure that I'm dropping into presence and pleasure. So those are 2 things for me that it's I find pleasure in my morning matcha. Sometimes I'll add fun flavoring. I make sure wherever I'm eating or whatever I'm eating feels good for me and my body. So finding those moments of just finding pleasure pleasure in what we might think of as mundane things really, I think, elevates the frequency and being present. I think it's something that, especially with social media, we're so, attuned to just like the highlight reels. Like, what am I seeing? Where am I scrolling? And the thing is, for me, that I realized in my embodiment was that I was constantly like researching, learning, watching, doing all of these things. And then I'm like, I'm not embodying, I'm consuming. So I started to back off of, consuming and became more the creator. So now it's maybe 15, 20 minutes a day that I'll even scroll on any of the apps because I'm waiting for a video to upload. But once that's there, I'm like, all right, I'm done. And I drop back into the present moment. So those for me are kind of the pillars every day. And then there's always the fluff, fun, sparkle on the, outer perimeter. But those are the pillars that I make sure every day I am like dropping into, conscious of, and hitting on the head every day.
I think those are so crucial to have daily practices when we're talking about getting your energy right and getting into your like fullest, best self. So I love the way you broke that down. And one of the things that you said, and I know you know this being an entrepreneur, but there's so much focus on hustle culture. And if you're not hustling, you're not doing enough. And I think that just reminding and giving yourself permission to be slow and have a slow morning and ease into your day and not have to do it all right off the bat is such a needed reminder for a lot of entrepreneurs out there, because I know I feel pressure from time to time, like, am I doing enough? But I thrive when I'm slow. I thrive when I give myself permission. It's just, I think some designs, and I'm not sure how much you mess with human design, but like some designs, I think just thrive on slow and on really following your own flow. So I love that you brought that out. So one of the things that you were talking about is like moving through your blocks, your fears. How do you actively do that? I think we talk about it, but any tactical way, what would that step-by-step look like for you?
Mm-hmm. So I'll give there's two things that are really dropping in. One is that if I'm a little crunched on time, but in my morning check, I'm realizing I'm waking up a little anxious. I'm waking up feeling like constriction. I'm fear filled, whatever words you want to use there. The quickest way is I like shake my body and bounce, and I'll start to just tune into like, what is happening? Like, what am I actually scared of? What's fear in my being right now? What's the anxiety about? And normally it's, something that I'm creating a story about in my mind that, oh, this is going to be this. And I'm already playing all these for instances out. And then I just have to drop back in during my like kind of shaking, bouncing. Sometimes I'll do tapping, and I just am sitting there with myself and I'll say, this story hasn't played out yet. And we actually can control our space in that story. So how do I want this to go? So instead of what I'm fearing is going to happen or what I fear is going to unfold, I kind of reel back my energy and I think, okay, how do I play this in the best possible scenario? And I just shift the perspective into how amazing could this actually be? How could this actually really serve me? And this is an even bigger stretch when it's something that maybe isn't, an easy find of how this can serve you. And so that's kind of one quick way, is that I'll drop into my body, start moving out the energy and just asking myself, what am I scared of? What's the root? Am I making a story about it? Can I flip this perspective? The deeper kind of what I tell clients, if you can at least do that and get the perspective and the mindset shifted later, I want you to come back and I want you to just lay down. I really like to lay on my floor. I have hardwoods in my house. I just like to be on the hardwood floor, and I'll sit there and I'll just get really still with myself, do some breathing, and I'll ask, where in me is feeling blocked? So a big one in the collective is money, right? This one is huge. People are like, I can't make money. I'm blocked. It's not coming to me. It's not flowing. I'm doing all the affirmations. I'm lighting all the candles. I'm doing all of the things, but there's something still not letting it flow. And so, let's just say money blocks. So if you're lying down and you start to say, I'm feeling really blocked and scared about money, how do I let that go? And I tell my clients to just breathe. I'm like, breathe from the crown of your head down. And I want you to just imagine this like light is scanning you. And I want you to pause wherever you start to feel the most energy. And a lot of times it's either in the heart space or it's in that belly womb area. And then I'm like, now I want you to kind of like go into that energy. Why is it there? Right. So for me, when I feel fear of money personally, I am a single mother. So I'm providing for my children. So my heart starts to get fearful when I feel stagnancy because I want to give them the best. And then I dig deeper of like, what's the layer below that? Right. So what's the original fear? Now go deeper. What under that? Why is that there? Well, my mother was pretty much a single mother and she just always put us first. She gave us everything. I want to follow in the footsteps of giving this amazing life. Then I get down to, do I really need to be scared of this? Right. So it's kind of this like unraveling or like taking pieces off of like, what's the first thing I'm noticing and identifying about this fear or block? Now, why is that there? And then go deeper and get down to the like bottom root that you can. And a lot of times you'll find like your inner child in those spaces, or you'll find your family, right? Or things you've been programmed to believe. This is the juice, is in those spaces. That's where we get to do the alchemy work of saying, oh, okay, my inner child is really scared because I don't ever want to experience, let's talk about relationships for a moment, abandonment. My inner child doesn't like to feel abandoned. So in a relationship, maybe there's something triggering me and I'm feeling really anxious and scared because deep down under these layers, my inner child felt abandoned. And so that little part of me now needs me to sit with them and talk to them. And, if an inner child part comes up, I always tell my clients, I'm like, just find that version and like bring them into your space. What do they need to hear? How do they need to be comforted? What do they need to do? And then if there's something adult you can do in the present for them, do that. And if it's a belief system, sit there and get into the nitty gritty of it. Where did it come from? Where did it get programmed? Does it still need to be there? Is it true for you? Right? So this is like a loaded question, but there's just this layering that gets to happen, and it's a practice. So if any of you are listening to this and you're like, that sounds like a lot, it is a practice. And it's like, take it layer by layer. And this is also where I'm always telling people, find the books, find the coaches, find the podcast, find the support to guide you through these things, because these are where you really transform your life on a deep level when you start to understand how to unravel your blocks, your traumas, what's coming up in your body. Like these are like key pillars to changing your life.
I love the way you broke that down, because it was such a doable activity that people can sit with. I love the question, what's underneath? Whenever I feel stuck or blocked, I just hold space for that question. And some people are really visual and can see that for themselves. I love to write it out, like when I'm most in flow. So when you're doing these activities, personalize them to what you resonate with most, like what your activity is. And that might look different than mine, and that might look different than Brittany's. But using this practice as an overall guide is going to be huge, because when we can go back to that inner child and love on them and remind them they're safe, it really does heal. And if we think of like quantum timelines, right? If we think of the ability to go back to any time and space and heal ourselves and do the work and love ourselves in ways maybe other people couldn't, or show up for ourselves in the ways that maybe other people couldn't, we can create some powerful, powerful healing. And I want to reiterate the whole shaking and somatic work is really powerful for releasing blocks. It's really simple and underrated. And if you don't have any time for anything else in your day, follow through with that, especially when you're feeling off, because sometimes we just wake up feeling off. We're recording this in the middle of retrograde. Some people are going through it right now. And so honoring your body and having these tools in your toolkit so that you have access to them and you're not stuck in the energy of anxiety. And then when we get stuck in the energy of anxiety, we create stories. So it's really just stopping the story from starting by going a little deeper. So I'm obsessed. I love this conversation already. This is called Rock Your Comeback, though. So I love when people tell me their comeback stories. Was there a time in your life where maybe you weren't feeling embodied? Like, what led you to the work that you do?
Ooh, so I think that the biggest comeback that I feel really full circle, right? Because I feel like I have a lot of like little things that I'm just like, okay, that one pulled the rug from beneath me for a moment, right? For me, I really became attuned to my gifts and being this spiritual practitioner when I became a mother. Before that, I was into like meditation and yoga and all of those things, but becoming a mom really pushed me into deeply healing a lot of parts of me and really like tuning into my own gifts and being this leader and coach that I am. It's how I started to want to learn even more so I could help other people move through this process. So my son's dad and I got divorced. And during this divorce, I had coaches at the time that were our therapists, and they were basically like, we hate to tell you this, but we don't like to use this word because it's very like, catchy right now, but you are coming out of a very narcissistic space, and the healing that you're going to have to do is going to take 10 times what a normal kind of breakup is going to take, because you're going to actually have to unwind all of these beliefs and thought forms that you've kind of accepted in this space and that you're still believing about yourself that aren't actually true. So on top of, going through a divorce, being a single mother to two little babies at the time, I'm thinking thinking like, oh, great, this is like going to be, intense. So I started really digging into, how to heal from manipulation, how to really get into the structure of our minds and our belief systems, which this ended up serving me immensely going forward. But really, it was just this personal healing of how do I even unwind the beliefs that I have around me and my abilities and who I am. And then the question was, who am I? Who am I in this space? Who am I as a mother? Who am I as a person, as an entrepreneur, as a leader? And so there were all these questions, and I was in constant curiosity. And so that was, I think, the biggest savior for me, is that I didn't grab onto something right away and just identify with like, oh, that makes me feel really good, I'm going to stick to that. It was like, well, yeah, that makes me feel good, but is that true for me? Or is there a piece of this that's true for me that I can kind of put in my little puzzle right now and then just keep moving to find more aligned pieces? And that was actually the time too that I started studying embodiment. I started to realize that I was in full masculine role in my marriage and my relationship. And then I started looking back on all my other relationships and I was like, oh, Brittany, you have not been in your feminine. You have not even given room for a partner to be in their masculine and you be in your feminine, because you're constantly needing to control to feel safe. So I started really studying femininity, masculinity. What is the balance? Where was I? And while I studied the feminine is when I really started to try to understand and grasp what is embodiment. Because all of these people talk about you're feminine, embody her, and they don't really explain the breakdown. So I'm like, I have to figure this out. And so I really started utilizing all the tools. And while you just hit on the head with the hustle culture, with being, the entrepreneur, I was raised by an entrepreneur. And so I witnessed the hustle culture that he had. My dad was always 2 phones, always working, had all these things happening, and we had a great life. But I really had to unlearn that because I'm like sporting 2 babies, on my hip. I'm single momming it. I'm working from home. I'm trying to create content and do all these things. And I realized like, I'm so burnt out. I am like so done. So I really played in, how do I slow it down? How do I work and flow in a way that feels really good for me? And this came with a lot of grief. This came with a lot of hard realizations around my beliefs, around things I've picked up from my family, even around motherhood for me. It was like, when you become a mom, you don't worry about yourself. You just, everything's the kids. Everything is for the kids. You do everything for the kids. And I felt like such a horrible mom because I'm like, yes, I'm always going to give them the best, but there's more than that. And I really had to get okay, because there were parts of me that even believed that the higher beings, be it God, angels, whatever, were going to like think I was a bad person because I wasn't devoting everything to my children. And so this is the shortest version, the longest, probably year and a half of just deep grief and understanding like I have carried all of these things that aren't even me. And so it was rewriting like, who am I? Like, and not even rewriting at moments. It was just finding me. Like, where do I feel good in these spaces? And as I was doing this, I started to, vibrate this energy that just felt good. Like I woke up being like, I don't have to hide any part of me. Like I know deep down that what I believe here, and here are deeply my beliefs, and they don't hold any of my ancestry, my mom, my dad, belief systems I've been programmed by. This is all me. And then it was starting to understand that now I'm illuminating and shining a light for people that they may not like. And so the embodiment went to like 2.0 of like, okay, cool. Well, now you know who you are, but some people aren't really going to like that. So now you really got to stand in that fire and in your truth, and you cannot be rocked. And so this was probably, a 2-year period, honestly, of just deeply in self-reflection in, is this my ego? Is this a belief? All of these layers, these like shadow work or dark nights of the soul, as some people like to call them. But on the other side of it, I just walked into this level of myself that was unshakable. And I knew who I was. And it was and has been, I think, this constant, I don't like to use the word test. I'm going to say journey, this constant journey of, are you sure that's your belief? Are you sure you're going to stand in your truth? Are you sure that this is what you want? And it's been a whole process. And now I feel like I'm actually coming out of the other side of a whole other comeback, which I haven't fully integrated, but we're there. So maybe, another podcast that we get on, we can talk about that. But I really think that the catalyst for me was this divorce, this understanding of, I don't even really know who I am outside of the programs. I don't even know who I am as a person, and really allowing myself the journey and being slow to figure out who I am, what I like, what my truth is, right? And then allowing myself to express in that way that feels safe.
Well, and a lot of people like healing to be like this idea that we're just actively doing it and days we're going to be good to go. And I love the thought of letting it be slow and letting it be layered and letting it be sometimes we're doing the work and sometimes we're sitting in the embodiment of the work. And I think that when we stop pushing and forcing that we actually heal quicker, like that's, you know, a definite belief of mine. One of the things that you said, and I think this is true for so many people, is that you were finding yourself controlling things to feel safe. And I think a lot of people who control things or find that they're trying to control every aspect of their life or their environment or their work or their kids or their spouse, that they're sitting in that fear. And I'm curious what you could give advice wise for someone to help them step out of that control space and lean in a little.
Well, the first thing you have to understand is why. You know, why are you controlling? Why are you feeling like you can't surrender in these places? And I think more times than not, you know, when I've worked with clients, it's been inner child wounds. It's been attachment or bonding, you know, wounds that they feel they have to protect these parts of them. And a lot of times they're trying to protect their heart because they don't want to get hurt. They don't want to, you know, be too vulnerable. They don't want to come off weak, whatever it might be. So I think the first thing to understand is, why do you have to feel safe here? Where did you not feel safe? When did this happen where you felt that guard had to come up, where controlling meant safety? And so that in itself is going to be an unwind process, is where did this happen where you felt like you had to control it? And then coming into the practice of surrendering, this is an art form, I think, that all of us are constantly learning in different levels and spaces. But surrendering into, let's say, relationship, right? And this could be a partner, this could be a friend, a business relationship. There is really something beautiful about getting vulnerable and honest and raw enough with those souls around you to say, I'm really struggling to release control of this because I have a belief that if I don't do it, it's not going to be done correctly. If I don't step in and do it, it won't be done at all. If you do it, it might be wrong. And then I'm going to be frustrated. And then I'm going to have to redo it. Then we're wasting time, right? Whatever these beliefs are, just vocalizing that and allowing yourself to be witnessed is, I think, massive for people. And then just allowing them to also respond, because more times than not, when you come totally raw and vulnerable to people like that, they're going to be so much more attuned, number one, to your process, but number two, to really understanding like, oh, maybe I'm not understanding this person like I need to, right? And this is where like businesses and friendships and partnerships get to thrive, when the other party gets to see, I actually could step up and show more detail or more attentiveness to a part to help them feel safe. And so it gets to be this beautiful healing, I think, when you actually allow yourself to just be vulnerable and to speak and be witnessed. And I think, you know, people try to do this all on their own and all in their mind. And they're like, I've got this. And there's this kind of chip on your shoulder. Like, I don't want anyone to know what's going on. I'm going to do this on my own. And honestly, I think it's the biggest piece that we have to kind of set down, because we are not supposed to be doing all of this by ourselves in our mind, in our own little bubble. We don't heal as deeply and as well doing it by ourselves. We need to be witnessed. And if we can be witnessed in that specific space, 10 times better of healing and movement, and the communication gets better. You add depth to those relationships that you've kept yourself really guarded from. So practicing vulnerability and just finding the why and allowing yourself to be witnessed in it, I think is like a massive step. And even if that's to a therapist or a coach, because it's too scary to do with the party that you're interacting with, that is still amazing, because you'll get comfortable enough to speak up when you feel safe in those spaces, because you're now practicing the safety of vulnerability and of surrender and being witnessed.
Here's what I love about what you just said, is that a lot of times when we're talking about healing and we're talking about taking care of ourselves and going on these journeys within ourselves, we're talking about self-work. And it's so important that as you're doing the work, you're going to be surrounded by people. You're going to be in relationships. You're going to be in friendships. You're going to be living with your spouse or your parents or your whoever. And being able to vocalize your honest truth is so vital for the healing process, because like you were saying, I finally was done hiding parts of myself. When we're in these moments where we're healing, we're becoming different, and not everybody knows that. And not everybody in your environment knows that. And so vocalizing how you're different and how you would like to be treated differently, or how you could have assistance in your world is necessary. And I think especially with moms, when we're talking about masculine versus feminine energy, I know that it's easy. And I think there's a societal expectation right now, because moms are in the role where they're working and they're doing full-time parent things, and there's just a high expectation on doing for moms. And I think that it's harder for us to step into our feminine energy than ever before because of the level of demand on our time, our mental focus, our mental load. I'm curious if you could speak to moms specifically about stepping into their feminine energy with that being the case.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things to talk on. So, like I said, my kind of big comeback was right in the depths of motherhood and doing it on my own. And my littlest was 4 months old. My oldest was about 3. So we had little babies still in, breastfeeding, diapers, all the things. So watching some of these women that I was seeing on social media that are, doing all these beautiful ceremonies, and they're taking all this time to get ready in the mornings and talking about, embodiment and femininity. And I'm like, I am luckily used to be a professional makeup artist. So luckily I can throw my face on in 5 or 10 minutes, but the luxury feeling of everything just being so, free flowing and easy didn't feel attainable to me. And so I really had to figure out, how do I make this work in my realm? So for moms, I'm going to share what worked for me and kind of what I've guided other clients through. So for me, I started to be okay, what can I do right now? Right. I still have a baby who is pretty much always latched onto me or in my carrier. I'm not able to just be up and roaming on my own sovereign space all the time. So I started to think, okay, well, I do want my kids to see me in a feminine space because I want them as masculines. I have 2 boys to understand the difference between feminine energy and masculine energy. And so we talk a lot about this. And so for me, movement, like I said, is a big thing. So I would literally every day find movement, even if I had the baby on the pack or I put him in his little chair. And my older son, I'd be like, let's do movement. I'd blast music and we'd dance and we'd move around. And I would utilize that time where the babies are entertained to also drop into what am I feeling right now? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I tired? Am I over capacity? Am I scared? Am I stressed out? And just witnessing it at first, right? Because this is like we talked about layers. This is a layered process. So finding a way to kind of move with your kids, even find the ways to move and just listen to your body for a beat, hear what drops in. Because for me, when I'm driving or dancing or doing movement, my mind just starts to kind of channel, right? It starts to move because I'm not sitting and focusing on something specifically. So it's a perfect time to start to tune in. So that's one thing, is finding movement for me really helped. And then also getting outside as a mother was massive. And it did not matter if it was raining or snowing or beautiful. The kids love the weather, first of all. Some kids might not, but most kids, it's you're going to take me in the rain and let me run around. Cool. So it was getting outside and getting in the earth and allowing myself to get grounded. And so my kids are those crunchy kids that walk around without their shoes on and they're like, Mom, we're grounding, because I've shown them the way, right? So one of the things I want every mom to realize is you are literally showing your children how to do these things. And it is so important for females and males to understand these basic essential pieces, I think, of getting grounded and being present in our bodies. And this is embodiment. And so as you start to move, you're honoring your space in your body. As you start to get grounded, you're honoring that you are connected, right? You're grounding into energy that maybe you're just going to give a bunch of it back to the earth. Maybe you're going to pull energy up from the earth. Maybe you and your kids just get to make amazing memories and you get to really have that moment of I'm doing really well at motherhood, because that also, I think, is a feminine piece that we do not let ourselves feel enough. So even just getting out and playing is going to allow you to see the kids just in full joy. And you have those glimmers of, I'm actually doing a really good job. And we all need those moments. And then the other piece is, how do you find the things that are pleasurable to you as a female, as a woman? For me, it was coffee, because that was what I was on. Now I'm on matcha, but I would find cafes that I really liked. And I would set up and work at those cafes. I would get really beautiful drinks and I would make it a ritual in my morning to get myself that and pray almost over these coffees or these matchas or these drinks, just in gratitude that I'm able to have this moment of pleasure just for me. This isn't for the kids. This isn't for anyone else. This is my little moment. And then past that, finding ways to take care of yourself. As mothers, there are sometimes I had a client who literally was I haven't brushed my hair in 12 days. And I'm these are little moments and there is no judgment on any of this. But there's these moments where where when we walk by a mirror and we see ourselves, it's so easy for us to just be like, oh, I look bloated today, or my hair looks horrible, or I'm just not looking, up to par. If you can give yourself little things, like for me, it was always just at least like my powder, my mascara, and my brows. It was like, if I have this on my face, I'm at least feeling that layer of, I feel kind of put together, right? Then it was like, I don't have time to like do my hair. I have little babies, but I still want to look cute. So I started looking into like scarves and fun headbands and things that could make me feel more put together. I found like capsule wardrobes, because for me, it was the easiest, like in and out was the best for me. So it's like, how do I become more minimalist? So I'm choosing outfits that look put together. They look clean. I feel good in them. So it's these little pieces too, I think, of your aesthetic that as mothers, it's very easy to just kind of throw to the wayside. But I promise you, doing little steps to make yourself feel good is going to make so much difference. And as the babies are older, you'll start to do more and start to step more into that. But it's just so important to do that. And also, I think the biggest piece is finding a sisterhood, finding other women, whether they're mothers or not, who can cheer you on and tell you like you're doing amazing, right? And can meet you for coffees and help bring things if you're like, I'm overwhelmed, I need this, right? And being in practice of just allowing yourself to be vulnerable, like we just talked about, like just, I don't know how many times I called my friends in full breakdown and I'm like, today has been a day. Like I'm just really struggling. I'm really scared. I'm really feeling overwhelmed. And they just held the space, even if they couldn't do anything. And then it just felt better to like lay it down. That's also honoring your feminine, just allowing yourself to be witnessed, just break down where you need to break down and then get yourself together and keep moving, because that's what we do as females and as mothers. But I think those little things are really good, just like baseline, find the places for those. And I think that will help catalyze you into bigger pieces.
I love that you brought back in the idea of other people. Like, I just think that as somebody who's been working from home for like the last 4 years, I used to have a wellness center in New York with 2 other women. And so having just constant interaction and support and here's what happened here, having that and going to work on your own, I've had to be so much more intentional about going to coffee shops and just being around other humans, or prioritizing friendship hangouts that are like soul fulfilling. That has been a lifesaver for me to stay in my feminine energy and be supported if how I'm doing work isn't the absolute best way for me. Just knowing when you need other things, I think, is important. And I also want to just point out and return to the idea that when we're in flow with ourselves, when we are dancing in the kitchen, when we are in a embodied practice where we're holding a cup of coffee, that is the places where we hear our intuition the loudest, that can guide us to the next step. So it's so funny because a lot of people like to go searching for intuition, and I'm a real big believer that intuition will come to you. So putting yourself in those moments of joy, of being in the present moment, of being with the people you love, that is the quickest way to get into your intuition. So I love that you brought that up. This has been such a beautiful conversation. I know people are going to want to connect with you, reach out to you. How can they best find you?
Yes, my website is one of the easiest. So thebrittanyrenee.com. If you're on TikTok, I'm under that babe B. And if you're on Instagram and YouTube, it's the Brittany Renee. So it's THEE and then Brittany Renee. So I'm sure I'll have all the links and all of that easily accessible for y'all too.
Yes, all the links will be in the show notes so that you guys can reach out to her, connect with her, make sure to follow her on all the socials. And is there any last words of wisdom on your heart for the people listening today?
I'm really hearing like something that collectively needs to be heard a lot right now is to trust yourself. I think there's so much searching and grasping outside of ourselves. And the truth is, we have everything we need within us. And you are the one being who knows exactly, with that gut feeling, with that intuition, exactly what you need to be doing. You just have to give yourself the space to listen and to hear it, and trust that even if you're being called to jump into places that feel really scary, that there is so much support when you're really following that intuitive tug, that heart-centered feeling. And there's no need to be scared, because you have everything within you that you need.
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much for holding space and spending time today. This was amazing. I know everyone's going to love you. Make sure to follow her. All the links are in the bio, and make sure to check out my latest book, Rock Your Comeback Down to Earth Guide to Reclaiming Your Power. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to get a copy of my latest book, Rock Your Comeback, The Down to Earth Guide to Reclaiming Your Power, just about everywhere books are sold. Join the Comeback Club for exclusive access, masterclasses, and more. And I always love to know what you think, so make sure to shoot me a DM or leave me a review. Thanks for listening to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on the world. Now go step back into your power. The world's been waiting for you. But first, if you could, leave me a review or share with a friend. Thank you.